Martin and Robert De Niro had been looking for a project they could do together for several years. They had settled on screenplays a couple of times, but it wasn't until 2007 that a concrete idea had finally started to take shape. Robert had read a book called I Heard You Paint Houses by Charles Brandt and immediately sent it to Martin. The director was immediately interested, because the novel looked like the perfect farewell piece to his portrayals of the criminal world, something Scorsese had been doing his entire life. It took 2 years to get a screenplay written, which Steven Zaillian had taken on. Steven had become well known for his work on Awakenings, American Gangster, and Schindler's List, the latter of which had brought them together back in the early 90s. Afterwards, Zaillian had helped complete the script for Gangs of New York, and by 2009 had finished working on the adaptation for The Irishman. Before casting had begun, Brad Gray, head of Paramount Pictures, became interested in the project. Shutter Island had been a profitable success for the studio, so providing a $100 million budget didn't seem like a problem. But after a couple of years of preparations, and due to a series of unsuccessful investments, Gray lost his seat at Paramount and the new bosses abandoned the project. According to the director, no other studio in Los Angeles wanted another De Niro and Scorsese film. But in 2016, they found one. The CEO of Netflix, Ted Sarandos, offered to take on Martin's film with a budget of $160 million. It was no secret that Scorsese was openly opposed to home viewing and didn't like the philosophy of streaming services. To agree to this deal meant that there wouldn't be a theatrical release, because the company's policy didn't allow films to be distributed until after a month on Netflix. Large movie theater chains received their films 90 days before they hit other services, and would not do business any other way. So an agreement with Netflix meant no deal with theaters. But Scorsese convinced the company to bend their rules for him and allow a theatrical release right from the start.
What did I know?
Much later, in August of 2019, Netflix would rescind this deal and the film was released according to the company's standard practices.
We tried everything we could.
But it was too late to do anything about it. The greatest casting challenge they faced was persuading Joe Pesci to join. Robert presented the book to Joe and told him that they simply had to make this film.
Yeah, good, okay, bye.
The actor had retired and is rumored to have turned down about 50 other offers. But how could he say no to such a reunion?
Oh, thanks. Frank.
Hey, Frank, how you doing?
Joe agreed and insisted that he play the role of Tony Pro. But the director wanted to show a different side of the actor and insisted on an unusual character for Pesci, Russell Bufalino.
Do you know why God made the sky so high?
No.
So that the little birdies don't bunk their head on it when they're flying around.
Martin also called on Harvey Keitel. They hadn't worked together since The Last Temptation of Christ, 30 years earlier.
You don't know how good a friend you got.
I know.
No, you don't know.
Harvey's involvement made the film even more epic. When Al Pacino, who for various reasons had refused to work with Scorsese throughout his career, agreed to play Jimmy Hoffa, the film acquired a new historical significance.
We are the biggest and best and most honest union in this country.
The director knew most of the supporting actors from Boardwalk Empire. 10 people from that series made it into the film.
You people?
I'm done.
You're done?
I'll rip your fucking head off. Hey!
As well as a couple from the recent show Vinyl.
Can they prove it?
Ironically, there wasn't a single Irishman in The Irishman.
They wouldn't dare. They wouldn't dare.
Even in the early stages of preparation, Martin was concerned with finding actors to play a young De Niro, Pesci, and Al Pacino. This option was considered, but given that the entire film is riddled with flashbacks, it didn't make much sense. So it would be CGI to the rescue.
Whatever you need me to do, I'm available.
The company, Industrial Light and Magic, developed a special motion capture and rejuvenation technology for the film. This allowed the actors to forego conspicuous makeup and prosthetics that were common in movies up to that point. To bring this effect to life, Scenes were simultaneously shot on 3 cameras equipped with special lenses.
Which is the camera surrounded by 2 what we call witness cameras, which are infrared cameras.
Test takes with De Niro amazed both the producers and the director. This experimental innovation, created especially for The Irishman, is the main reason the budget became inflated.
Oh, I decided nothing. It felt fine.
Oh, come on, Frank.
By the way, the computer-generated rejuvenation was only used on De Niro, Pesci, and Pacino. The rest of the actors still used makeup. The effect may still be noticeable, but keep in mind that these types of graphics are still in their infancy, and The Irishman will go down in history as the first film to try it.
Use the CGI as makeup.
That was the big turning.
Yeah,
That was the thing.
that's
that
the big
changed
thing.
it. Yeah.
The filming began at the end of August 2017. The director was caught off guard by another problem. The 3 main characters were all over 75 years old. Their movements were slower, their postures had changed, even their speech had become quieter.
Like some guy who's always rushing all over the place, and they missed the big picture.
The first day on set, Martin was satisfied with Al Pacino's acting, but cinematographer Rodrigo Prieto asked the director to tell Al to get out of his chair more energetically. This was Scorsese's first time working with Pacino, and he didn't want to start off on the wrong foot by telling the actor that his movements were too much like that of an old man. The character of Hoffa was only 49 according to the script. Fortunately, this didn't cause any contention.
Him and all the bullshit problems he put me through. Already, I gotta go. You don't expect me to look at this.
In fact, the actor put as much energy as possible into subsequent scenes, which further highlighted the technological advances and contrast between the time jumps.
I'll apologize for being late. After I kidnap your granddaughter, rip her guts out, and send them to you in a fucking envelope.
Of course, sequences where the movements didn't match the actor's supposed age weren't avoided. The most obvious example is the scene with the shopkeeper. De Niro clearly didn't have enough energy, especially considering the person behind the character he was playing. The real Frank Sheeran was about 6'4", and although this scene isn't a good example, the stature of 5'8" De Niro was manipulated through the film through perspective, scenery, and camera movements to mimic the dimensions of the real Irishman.
I don't know how he did it, and I ain't gonna ask.
Filming lasted 107 days, the longest shoot of Martin's career, but considering that each take required at least 9 cameras and the film consisted of 300 scenes in 100 locations, it wasn't that long after all. As for the year it took to edit the film, this was fairly standard for the director. Thankfully, Scorsese wasn't facing pushback from the producers or censors, so he got to include all of his favorite shots in the final cut, including references to his own previous work.
Look at this.
Now, for something like this, you're gonna need 2 guns. The one you're gonna use, and a backup.
What are you doing? You leaving your car?
Watches the car for me. It's easier than leaving it at a garage and waiting.
The film's runtime ended up being 3.5 hours, the longest film in his career, as well as the longest big-budget American feature film in the last 20 years. The last picture to require such stamina was Kenneth Branagh's Hamlet.
To be or not to be? That is the question.
Netflix turned out to be a sanctuary for Martin, just as HBO had been, because in the same year, even before the premiere of The Irishman, he shot a semi-documentary film about Bob Dylan, covering the legendary Rolling Thunder review tour.
Someday, everything is gonna be different.
In the film, truth and fiction are intertwined. Stage interviews are replaced with real ones, turning history into legend. The magic that Scorsese possesses is unsurpassed. The Irishman premiered on November 27th and immediately became the most watched film on Netflix. It went on to receive nominations for 5 Golden Globes and 10 Oscars.
Marty, I gotta tell you, I love the first season of The Irishman.
Unfortunately, Martin and the crew experienced the same disappointment as they did with Gangs of New York. Not a single award.
And you let this happen in public?
But director Bong Joon-ho let Scorsese know how the global film community felt about him. The director is currently working on 3 projects. The Paramount television series, The Devil in the White City, about a Chicago serial killer in the late 19th century, a biopic about the 32nd US President Theodore Roosevelt, and the crime drama Killers of the Flower Moon, a history of an Indian tribe that experienced a series of killings after oil was discovered on their land in the 1920s. Leo DiCaprio is set to play the lead character in all of these productions, and in Killers of the Flower Moon, he will star alongside De Niro. Yes, Martin will be turning 80 in the next couple of years, but it looks like he will never stop confessing his love for cinema, because he always manages to find new words to express it.
Every step is a first step. Every brushstroke is a test. Every scene is a lesson. Every shot is a school. So let the learning continue.
Hey, do you like our work? Let us know with your like and comment. Push that subscribe button and share with your friends. If you want to support the project financially, become our sponsor on Patreon or YouTube sponsorship. Thank you.